Long ago, at the end of the last great ice age, there arose in the north a powerful queen. Her name was Juliana, and her ambition was to extend her realm to all the regions of the known world.
Okay, let's all go. Let's go.
Hello and welcome. Welcome and hello. This is Wait, You Haven't Seen? It's a show where we talk about movies, and specifically, we talk about a movie at least one of us has never seen before. I'm your host, Travis, aka TV's Travis. This is episode number 273, and our movie this week is the 1983 animated fantasy film Fire and Ice. And joining me to talk about it, it's Matthew Sargent. Matthew, how are you?
I'm good, Travis. Happy to be here and talk about some sword and sorcery stuff.
Yeah. So it's been a little while. You've been on before, but I wanted to get you back on. So we started talking, and this movie came up, and we kind of decided that it would be a good one to do. So what I'm curious about is, what's your history at all with Fire and Ice?
My history is not having seen it ever before, but I do have background in being a fan of Frank Frazetta, who was a writer and concept artist on this, and fan of like the Conan short stories and movies from way back when. And I've seen a few Ralph Bakshi movies before, like the old Hobbit movie that he did, and Wizards, which is super weird.
Yeah, it is. Kind of the same for me. I knew of Frank Frazetta. If you're into any kind of fantasy stuff at all, you've heard that name or at least seen his work, right?
Yeah.
And I love Ralph Bakshi's Lord of the Rings. I think it's a great version of that. And I'm a big fan of that. And I recently, in the last year or two, saw Wizards for the first time, and I really enjoyed that. It was kooky, it was weird, but it was exactly kind of what I was thinking it was going to be. So, like, Bakshi for me is one that I have enjoyed quite a bit. So, but I hadn't seen this. I'd heard of it for a long time, and maybe you did this too. I don't know. I conflated this and heavy metal often. Like, not so much that I thought they were the same movie, but I would maybe see a still frame from this and think it was heavy metal, or picture moments from heavy metal being Fire and Ice. Like, they just sort of existed in that same world for me.
I can see that. They have a very similar style, and or at least parts of them do, and I can see this fitting into that pretty easily.
Yeah, and so you knew of Frazetta. He's not a pizza. He's an animator. He's an artist, for crying out loud. Frazetta, and you knew Bakshi. Did you also? I did read where some of the background art was done by, who were they? There's a couple of names.
James Gurney
Yep.
and Thomas Kincaid were background artists on there. And I'm fairly familiar with both of them. James Gurney being the guy who created Dinotopia.
Mm-hmm.
And he's known for all kinds of book covers in fantasy and sci-fi. And I have one of his art books right over here, Imaginative Realism.
Very cool.
He's a really good artist and art instructor. And I know Thomas Kincaid is known as the painter of light.
Yeah.
And he was a very... he heavily commercialized his work in calendars and books and prints and all kinds of stuff. And I'm sure my mom has some of his work on the wall or in a calendar somewhere.
I also read that a layout artist for this was the person who created Eon Flux, which I thought was really cool. I think it wasn't Jeffrey Chernov, although he was the production supervisor for the live action stuff. So, okay, the live action stuff. One of the things about this, and it was a thing that I loved in Bakshi's Lord of the Rings, was his mixing of styles and his use of live action and rotoscoping and different things like that to create different moments in that Lord of the Rings. This he did. They did everything filmed live action in black and white to rotoscope it to animate it,
Right.
which I thought was fascinating. What do you think of that as a stylistic or a choice in terms of like animating as somebody who's done art? I'm curious.
I think it has kind of your pluses and minuses. Like with a lot of the action scenes, the animation is super smooth and all the motions are really realistic and look good. But on the other hand, it also it kind of lacks style. Like you're stuck with drawing a realistic human doing what a human can do, so you lack that stylization that cartoons are so well known for. And then it also limits the action because it has to be something you can film happening. So anything super cartoonish or bombastic would be difficult. Although they did animate pterodactyls that look pretty good, so
so
they managed some of that.
That was some of the cool stuff. Was the dragon hawks, as they call them, which immediately I heard that and I'm like, I want a dragon hawk. Like, just I hadn't even seen one yet, and I'm like, I don't care what it looks like, I want one. But like that stuff, and then the giant lizard that attacks the subhumans at one point. Was really cool looking. It's just basically like a big, almost iguana type lizard. What was really fun was finding some of the behind the scenes footage of them filming all of that stuff. I don't know if you had a chance to see or found any of that.
I found a couple clips.
It was great because it was like big, like cranes and heavy equipment they were using and like lifting actors up, the stuntmen up, and all that kind of stuff. And then taking all of that and rotoscoping it and animating over it, I thought was just fantastic. Like I really love that. I'm with you. There is that push and pull, right? Because the action in this, which is driving the story, it's a very action oriented movie, looks so good. Like, so the animation is so smooth with it. But I missed a little bit of the, like, Bakshi had a style to his animation. I haven't seen some of his earlier stuff like Fritz the Cat and Heavy Traffic, but I've seen a lot of clips of them. But I have seen Wizards, and like his animation style and his art style is very cool to me. And this didn't have that.
Right. Wizards demonstrates his kind of aesthetic a lot more than this does. Whereas I guess this is really leaning into Frank Frazetta's aesthetic, which is more realistic.
Yeah.
So that fits what it is more.
And they are, all the characters in it are very human looking, but not identical copies of what they filmed, right? So like Frazetta had his concept art, and then they would cast actors that looked close to that, but they still made a few changes. What I did notice was there were times, not often, it wasn't too bad, but there were a few moments where the faces especially got a little bit uncanny valley.
I feel like they had a rough time with Princess Tigra's face in particular. Like they were trying to make it very minimalist and dainty, but as a result, there was not a lot there a lot of the time. So
it got very odd. Got very flat. It lacked a lot of definition to her face. It was just sort of like eyes sitting on a blank space almost.
Yeah.
It happened a couple times too with Larn, I felt.
Yeah. And then going off that with the subhumans, the main villains, they lacked like a consistency where some of them looked very fantasy orc like. But then others started to look really human, and that started to look kind of racist.
Yes.
Which was very bizarre.
And I wondered, I don't think there was anything malicious to that necessarily, but I also think like it was sort of, there was a purpose to it. Some of it is whoever the stunt performers were, I'm sure. to an extent, but also it just that was interesting to me. But I enjoyed the subhumans more in those shots and in those moments where they did get more exaggerated and more kind of orcish looking, because it separated them and didn't make it look like, well, all of our protagonists and heroes are just blonde hair, blue eyed white people, and our subhumans are not. I didn't love that. But the when they were looking more orcish and more brutish, the subhumans were kind of interesting. One thing I did notice, and there's no way around it in this movie, is pants. Pants don't exist in this world.
Yep, no pants to be seen anywhere, no matter how cold or hot your kingdom is.
Right? I mean, we're dealing with an ice kingdom, and they're like Necron isn't even wearing pants. He's just wearing a shirt and a pair of underwear. Like,
sitting on that cold stone throne.
No wonder his skin was blue, right? He's just frozen. He's freezing. Get that man a pair of pants or some shorts at least. Come on.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought that was really funny. There's just like nobody, and that's Frazetta's style as well. Like a lot of his art, it's loincloths and hyper realistic, ripped guys. I mean, Darkwolf in this, who I don't think has ever actually even the name's never spoken. I only know it was Darkwolf from the credits, but like he's huge. He's just this big, massive dude. So I wanted one of the things with this visually, again, the animation style, the rotoscoping and all of that, I thought was really cool. I thought it was a neat way to do it. I'm a big fan of A Scanner Darkly that came out. What was it, 10, 15 years ago?
Okay.
I don't know if you saw that or not. It's a Richard Linklater.
I know I did see it, but I don't remember it very well.
So that one was far closer to photorealistic, but the whole thing was rotoscoped. So it has that very kind of graphic novel look to it. And I like that kind of stuff. So I love the rotoscoping here. But so much of it was put into, so much time and effort was put into that part of it. I do feel like the story, and I'm a proponent of simplifying the stories and give us interesting characters. Mm-hmm. But I feel like here we kind of did a little too much of both of those. Like the story is incredibly simple, but the characters are very base level cookie cutter characters as well.
Right.
So, take that as you will. Roy Thomas and Jerry Conway wrote the screenplay for this, and if those names sound familiar at all to anybody, they were writers that did Conan and Red Sonja comics, and actually were both at one point editor-in-chief at Marvel during the 70s. I think Roy Thomas took over for Stan Lee, and Jerry Conway was for a short time, or the other way around. I forget which order it went in. But they're decent writers. They wrote some good stuff. I just think that this was a little bit too distilled and too simplified at times.
Yeah. It was very simple overall. And then most of the middle felt like a series of random encounters in like a D&D game.
Kind of, yeah.
That didn't add to the character. It didn't add to the story or world, really. It's just, here's a big squid. Here's a big lizard.
Mm-hmm.
Here's suddenly a very interesting witch and her son, but we're going to kill them before we find out what their motivation or anything is.
I had that. I'm like, so here were my notes in succession as that scene was unfolding. I'm like, ooh, this lady's giving me the creepy factor, followed by, nope, she's definitely not a friend. And then, oh, okay, all right. Then I had to have a comment about Atwa, because he had the skinny legs, like big brute, but just had twigs for legs. And then my next note is, so they were pretty much pointless, because before we get to know anything about them, they get killed. And at least she got one last moment, which was possibly my favorite moment in this is Larn coming back after the house has been burned down to find, there's nothing left, and then the skeleton sits up, and it's her skeleton talking to him. That was really like when the movie leaned into the like real fantasy elements of it, the magic and the stuff like that. It got a lot better. It just didn't do enough of that throughout. I feel like they just need like that was where the story started to get interesting,
Right.
or could have. Anyway.
Yeah. That little bit with what's her name?
Rolael,
Relail and Atwa, and then like her coming back as a skeleton was unexpected and pretty cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, I could have used a little more weird magic stuff that wasn't just the subhumans capture Tigra and then lose her, and then they fight a creature and then run away again.
And Tigra. Okay. First of all, Tigra, very Frazetta type looking character.
Yeah.
I was reading that they cast Cynthia Leek in the role. She played the live action Tigra. And then when they animated her, they, what's a kind way to put this? Enhanced the look a little bit.
Yeah.
Because she wasn't voluptuous enough for Frank Frazetta's idea of what Tigra should look like. She was voiced, though, and a lot of the voicing was other people. Tigra was voiced by Maggie Roswell, who, by the way, was in The Simpsons. She was Maude Flanders.
Okay.
It's voiced by Maggie Roswell. Cool. So I thought it's kind of interesting. I wonder what Ned would think of Tigra.
Yeah.
But she is a damsel in distress, like 100% right. Damsel in distress.
The whole time.
She gets a couple of moments where she gets to start to go in a direction of being more than that, but never gets to follow through with it, and just spends the whole movie getting captured, and then getting herself out of being captured, and then getting captured again, and just rinse, repeat.
Yeah.
Which did get a bit repetitive. I will admit that. Like once, twice, maybe I could see, but it was like just every scene was her getting captured and then somehow getting out of that capture, either on her own doing or somebody rescuing her. At one point, I think I had 3 different notes of like, you're not going to cut through the chain with a knife, because she's trying to saw through that chain. Yeah. With just a pocket knife. And then Atwa comes and just snaps it like a piece of frayed rope.
Yeah.
But they wanted to make her, I feel like they wanted to make her into more, or there was the possibility of that, because the beginning of it, she's sort of lamenting like, I don't want to just hang out here and learn stuff. I want to be involved. I want to do something important. But her father, King Gerald, of what was it? Firetown?
Firekeep.
Firekeep.
It was Ice Peak and Firekeep. Subtlety
is not in this movie.
Yeah. Nope.
But he tells her like, no, your job is to stay here and learn. Look, if he had let her be involved more, she wouldn't have gotten kidnapped in the first place. So, sorry, Gerald, that's your fault. But she wants that, and then when she gets brought in front of Necron, our villain, who I got a very maybe, and I don't know if you did or not, he gave me, at least for the first hour of the movie, very Sauron vibes, where he's talked about a lot, but he doesn't do much. He's there at the very beginning, moving the glacier or whatever that is.
Yeah.
And then we just sort of talk about him, and he's not there for an hour, and then he comes back into the movie.
Right. And when we see him again, it's fairly abrupt. Yeah. Like, after a series of Tigra getting captured and escaping, she gets captured one more time, and then all of a sudden she's there. And Necron's mother, I forget her name.
Queen Juliana.
Queen Juliana's there with her, delivering the captive. And it's just very sudden.
Very. Because we go... So, the first time she gets away, Juliana contacts the the subhumans through whatever magical means via the fire that they used. It's
right.
not explained, not probably. I mean, not like super important, but it's just they light a fire and can talk to her, and she gets upset and kills one of them because they let Tigra get away.
Yeah.
And the next time she gets captured by them, I think she gets away, and the third time she's captured by them, then suddenly she's just in front of Necron because reasons. We just kind of hit fast forward on the story a little bit.
Yep. We had our hour of random encounters. Now time to move
The session's
story.
wrapping up. Everybody's getting ready. You know, everybody's only got like an hour left till they can go home. So the DM's just like, oh, you know what? She's now there. She's in front of Necron. Let's just go. But when she gets in front of Necron and Juliana, and again, this is all like story stuff that we have to kind of figure out on our own. But it feels like, and maybe I'm wrong here, it feels like Juliana wants for Necron an heir, but I almost feel like she feels like she's losing control of him, and that maybe by getting an heir, she can then gain control back in some way. I'm not sure. I don't know if you got that impression at all or not.
I definitely got the impression that she raised up this very powerful sorcerer and then doesn't really have control of him anymore. But beyond that, I don't know exactly what she's hoping to accomplish with the heir. In a more typical fantasy thing, it would be try to unite the two kingdoms, but I don't think that's what she's trying to do. She wants to take over the world.
Yeah, it almost feels like she has her son in Necron, and then he gets too powerful and is out of control, and she's like, oh boy, all right, well, if I can get another heir, then I can usurp him by getting, then she can get rid of him and have an heir that she has brought up again and maybe do it better the second time. Almost like, well, Necron was the prototype. That didn't work out.
Yeah.
Let me get another one.
Sure.
But then Tigra is like, well, let me extend my hand in friendship. Like, she figured out on her own pretty well, I feel like, this is the best play because she wants peace. And what I liked about that whole scene was like her doing that, and then Necron's reaction to it is to just be like, no, I don't want peace between our people. I want to dominate everyone. Like, I don't care about you. I don't care about them. I don't care about anything. Which is a great villain. That's a great villain to have. So
right.
I liked
Just
that.
Straight up evil. Wants to rule everything.
Yeah.
Can't reason with him at all.
No, the line, I spit on peace, I thought was really good. And then, the other moment with Tigra is right at the end when everything's finished and there's one subhuman left, and Larn grabs the rock and he's going to smash the subhuman with it, and she's kind of like, no, it's over. Let's just start rebuilding. So it kind of feels like Thomas and Conway had that maybe built into the script a little bit more, and it just got tweaked and changed around to where we don't have the time for that. We're just gonna damsel just get her captured again. We need another action sequence, which I understand, but if I have complaints about this movie, it's simply that there is a lot of show don't tell, which I'm a fan of. It is a simple plot, but because the characters are also very simple and don't really have a ton of an arc to them, we're missing a few things. Like, I don't mind a mysterious background. Mysterious backgrounds are great, but Darkwolf, we know zero about him.
Right. And he's basically the hero of the movie.
Yeah. Oh, totally. 100%.
Like Larn and Tigra are the main characters, but they don't really accomplish anything.
Well,
they attempt some stuff, but it's Darkwolf who kills Necron at the end and does all the really heroic stuff.
Yeah, Tigra spends the whole movie getting caught, and then to her credit, she gets herself out of a lot of those situations, but then just gets caught again. So she's real good at escaping capture. She just can't stop being captured.
Yeah.
Larn, I had a note wrote down that his superpower is just running away from things and sleeping, because that's most of what he does in the movie. Like, how many scenes do we start in this movie with him just laying there sleeping? There's got to be at least 3 different moments,
Yeah.
3 or 4 different moments where he's asleep and wakes up in the scene. I know,
Yeah.
because the movie opens with his village getting destroyed by the glacier and the subhumans, and really cool action sequence with him running away, crawling up the tree, and all that kind of stuff. I loved all of that.
Yeah.
And I liked that as an introduction to our character, because we get to learn a lot about him right there. But then the next time we see him, he's asleep in a tree when Tigra stumbles upon wherever he is, or I think she did. But like, that's the next time we see him. And then there's 2 or 3 other times where he just wakes up in the middle of scenes, and he runs away a lot. He's not a fighter
Right.
through most of the movie. So, but then Dark Wolf is just like, he's to keep the D&D theme going that we sort of started, is like, he's the NPC that the DM brings in, like, all right, things aren't moving along fast enough. Here's somebody that can clear stuff out for you. You know?
Yeah.
He was great. He had what a look, though. Like, with the headdress and the glowing green eyes, and just huge. He's Conan basically, with a bear headdress or a wolf headdress.
Yeah. Since his name is never mentioned during the movie, my wife and I just kept referring to him as Batman, because he's just the guy with the pointy-eared mask who shows up and saves the day and disappears.
I saw a review of this on YouTube as I was doing some research, and I always like to go through, and if I can find a couple different either articles or video reviews on a movie that I'm going to cover, just to see what some people have said about it. And one of them said that the story was a lot like if you wrote a Batman story about Commissioner Gordon, and we're following Commissioner Gordon while Batman's doing all of the crime fighting in the background. And so the fact that you and your wife were calling Dark Wolf Batman is perfect, right? Because it's exactly what he's doing. Larn and Tigra are up here getting captured and knocked unconscious, and Dark Wolf just kind of shows up. It's like, all right, fine. Let me fix this, kill a bunch of subhumans, and then ride off into the sunset. I'll be back when you need me again. Like,
yeah.
But did you get some sense of a connection between Dark Wolf and Necron at the end? Because he's got a vendetta against this guy, right? Dark Wolf is like all about taking on Necron.
Yeah, he definitely has something there, and I was expecting some sort of reveal, like,
so was I.
They're brothers, or they were childhood friends or something, and everything went wrong, but then we just never got any resolution to his motivation.
Yeah, like, we don't get a motivation from him at all. He just goes for it. It's interesting, right? Because he wants Necron. He's going after him. Geralt, the king of Firekeep, listens to him, doesn't even bat an eye, so they have to have some kind of a connection, right? Like, there's something there, but we don't know what it is. And on top of all of that, Dark Wolf is resistant to Necron's magic. He's like the one that shows any real resistance to it.
Yeah.
I thought, like, I kept thinking, same as you, I thought there was going to be some sort of revelation. I thought it was going to get revealed maybe that he was his father.
Okay.
Because he also had disdain for Juliana.
Right.
If at one point, you remember, he called her, he said, Juliana, that wolf bitch, which made me wonder, is there some connection there? But we never get that. Yeah. So we kind of have to fill in the blanks ourselves. But he is the hero of the story, and he's just the most badass character in here, because he just shows up wrecking face. Like, he's just taking guys out left and right. And again, the rotoscoped animation looks so good, and the choreography for those scenes was really well done. And that's the kind of the other side of it, right? Is you can't just do rotoscoped live action animation. It's got to be good footage that you're working from for that to look good.
Right.
And they definitely got that, which
Yeah.
was cool.
The fight choreography was often very interesting and felt like an actual fight, even more than just like fancy choreography, but felt a little more brutal than you typically get.
Yeah, and more brutal than animation typically gets, because either your animation stuff is geared at a younger audience, so you're going to have fighting, but it's not going to be too much, or because of the nature of drawing the animations, it's hard to get. And maybe you can speak to this a little bit more. It's hard sometimes to get the look of a punch landing, or a sword hitting right in just drawing it out without like really referencing something that's actually happened. So I think having that choreography there and being able to have, instead of having to sort of interpret where and how those connections are going to get made, you've got footage showing you that you can build off of. So I thought that was really cool, because it just looked awesome. And he just axe here and there. There was a great one with like a two-handed overhead axe move on one of the subhumans. Slow motion too. So what did you think of that? What did you think of the slow motion stuff in there?
When it first started, I think the first scene was Tigra's capture.
Yes.
Initial kidnapping. And it was unexpected, but I think it worked pretty well. Like it built up more intensity for that scene, and just gave us a good idea of the choreography and what all was going down.
Yeah. But you're right. It was unexpected. And at first I'm like, wait, why is she moving like, oh, it's in slow motion, because there's no motion blur at all. Right.
Right.
And that messes with your head at first.
Yeah.
Because even in live action, if you do, because there's two styles of slow motion photography for video. There's overcranking, which is if you're unfamiliar with the term, overcranking is running more film through the camera in the same amount of time, so that when you play it back at normal speed, it's slower. You can go in the other direction, which is undercranking, which you can run less film through, and that will speed everything up. That you see a lot in Hong Kong cinema, especially older Hong Kong cinema. They will undercrank by a couple of frames, and so it just makes the action move faster. And then there's also more so recently, like overcrank type is a very old style or an old form of slow motion. You could do that as one, especially back when you had hand cranked cameras. Then there is sort of the post-production slow-mo, which is like the more juddery, jarring slow motion that's got a lot of blur to it, and you can tell was done after the fact. They shot something, and then they slowed it down in the editing bay. But both of those, because it's live action, and photography, comes with some amount of motion blur to it, that they didn't replicate that in the animation here.
Right.
So it just suddenly is moving slower.
Right. So however they animated it, they did it over something kind of as if it were normal. And so it makes for an interesting effect with their slow motion.
It does. And the first time you see it, it is weird. After seeing it once, what I like, and this is what's cool about film as an art form, is after that initial kidnapping scene, the next time they go into any of that slow motion in the animation, you're prepared for it now. You've seen it already, so it doesn't feel as jarring, and you can you buy into it throughout the rest of the movie, because they do use it quite a bit.
Right. Yeah.
So I enjoyed that. It's a interesting movie to like go through, because it's basically Necron's a bad guy. He wants to take over the world, and he is moving his giant glacier south to take over. And the Firekeep people don't want that. I loved at one point where, because we sort of forget about the fire, about Gerald and whatnot for a little while, and then we come back to him. Like his daughter's been taken, right? She's been kidnapped, and then we were like, oh yeah, remember Gerald and his son Taro? Like they're still around. And I did like that conversation because Gerald turns to his son and he's like, all right, we're out of ideas. We've tried nothing and we're out of ideas. So I need you to go to the ice spike or whatever it's called. And Taro's like, no, Dad, no, that's a bad idea. He's going to kill me. You know that. And he's like, well, that's a risk you're going to have to take. It's like, I just love the king is perfectly fine with just sending his son to die. One reviewer did say something to the effect of like the self-sacrificing move of sending his son. I'm like, it's not self-sacrifice at all.
Yeah.
But that was, I know from a writing standpoint, that scene is to set up, okay, Taro's going to go in front of Necron and we're going to show you just how powerful Necron is.
Mm-hmm.
Because we haven't seen him for a little while and we get to see him and he just makes 4 people kill themselves with their own swords in front of him and they can't do anything about it. Which did then make it weird when Larn shows up and Necron's first move is like, hold on, you interest me. I'm going to fight you with a sword now. Like, was he just bored? That just felt weird to me. Like, why this guy? Of like all the people, like you had the king's son, you had the prince, somebody who has some stature and something, but then just random dude that showed up at your place that you've never seen or heard of before, and you're like, no, hold on, you've got some spunk. Let's sword fight. Like it smacked of like plot armor to me.
Right. It's just Necron saw the main character tag above Larn.
Yes, Necron read the script.
Yeah.
Now again, they have a cool fight. But it's totally Necron just messing with him, right? Like he could have ended that at any point that he wanted to, and he didn't.
Yeah.
Which I think it would have been really interesting to have him try and use his magic and it not work right away. And that's what makes him interested in fighting Larn. Because like, ooh, a challenge. And then
that would have been good.
You know, do that. And then maybe somewhere along the line there's a tie to Darkwolf that we don't know about with Darkwolf and Larn instead of Darkwolf and Necron. Or there's a tie, like there's a few different avenues you could go down there. But give us a better reason than just, ooh, you're interesting, for him to not just immediately like, because here's the reason from me why that particular bit of plot armor and hand waviness, I don't mind. I don't know how you are with it. I don't mind sort of just hand waving things at times. I think you can get away with that of like, no, this is just, we want to do this to keep things moving along. Mm-hmm. But I want there to be somewhat of a reason for it. And here it felt like they didn't have that reason for Necron to not just immediately kill Larn.
Right. Yeah, I think in an instance like this where it would be so easy to put any reason in there to fight Larn one-on-one, they didn't.
So and I think that's... Yeah, I think it's literally
less forgivable than
yes
if it was just moving things along a little bit.
Because like any reason, because we've established at this point that Necron doesn't hesitate to do that to a prince and his guards, and he has no interest in Tigra as his wife or to bear him heirs. Or any form of peace. I spit on peace. I spit on you. He tells his mother to basically, if you try to do this again, I'll kill you. Like, we've established all of this with Necron. So by all of that, he should have just taken one look at Larn, who just shows up out of nowhere and just like flick of the wrist, kill him and move on. Like he wouldn't have hesitated
Yeah.
for that. So all you got to do is make him try that dismissive move, it not work, and now he's like, now I'm interested in you. But they didn't. They just missed that part.
Yeah.
And then you can tie it in with Dark Wolf and have more of a connection there. And like, ooh, something's going on here. My magic doesn't work on him, and then ooh, it really doesn't work on this guy. And why? Because there was that moment of like, why aren't you dying when he's fighting Dark Wolf at the end? And nothing, just crickets. He just like, well,
Right.
I'm not, and you are. It was so weird.
Yeah.
But the movie was more about. It was heavily influenced, and it was part of that whole, because like the early '80s was Conan the Barbarian, Dragon Slayer, Beastmaster, right? All of those were in that era. The Conan comics, I think, were running at that time. Red Sonja was around then, so it was a lot of the sword and sandals type stuff going on, or maybe not even sword and sandals, just like high fantasy.
This would probably be sword and sorcery.
Sword and sorcery. That's
more of a thing where
yeah,
the heroes are non-magical people fighting against basically evil wizards all the time.
Which also, again, I want them to lean more into the magic stuff,
Right.
Because that was really cool. Like I did like the way the magic that Necron was using seemed to almost be painful for him, or extremely pleasurable. I couldn't tell which.
Right. He made some really weird faces whenever he was doing magic. At the very beginning, when he was advancing his glacier, that was a little uncomfortable.
It was. My note was literally, old Necron is really enjoying that ice magic. Because those were some faces.
Yep.
But I liked that. I love that idea that like he's a conduit for this force and this power, and it does all of this to him. I thought that was really cool. There's no other magic user really other than Reliel, the witch, that we get 10 seconds with, and then she gets stabbed. And you'd think she'd use some kind of magic against the subhuman, the one subhuman that shows up. Because why that bugged me was you set up Atwa as like this huge hulking brute, and then he gets effectively killed off screen.
Right. Yeah, that's a bummer.
And
the guy who can just snap a chain like it's nothing.
Exactly. And we don't even see him in a fight. We just see the aftermath and the spear in his back. And then the one subhuman comes in and just runs up and stabs her in the stomach, and that's it. It's over. And they light the house on fire and leave. And this is the scene after we're introduced to these two characters. We barely know anything about them. Because like the way that scene with them started, I thought was really interesting. Ooh, okay, we're going to introduce some new characters. Ooh, a new twist and a new wrinkle. And it's not somebody from the Fire Keep, and it's not somebody from the Ice world either. It's somebody that lives in between them. And obviously he's got something against Necron, because when she plucks the hair, because that was, I loved like, ooh, here, drink this. And it immediately makes Tigra sleepy. And she passes out, right? And then she plucks the hair, puts it into her cauldron, does her little magic thing. I'm like, oh, okay, so she's a magic user. Cool, we've got more magic users going on. And she sees Necron as part of it. She gets that information, and that sets her off.
Right.
And
she's scared suddenly.
Yeah, she's angry and then scared, and then tries to use it to her advantage. And that's the end of her character development. And we just sort of like, well, never mind that character now. We'll just go back to Larn running away from stuff. So, there are things that could have been done better. Which is why I understand the movie was made for a modest budget. It was $1.2 million, which even for 1982, 83, that's a low budget for a film, especially an animated film. I think the movie that Ralph Bakshi did right before this. So he had done. So Fritz the Cat was 1972. He did Heavy Traffic. Wizards was 1977, and that was fairly well done, well taken. Lord of the Rings did really well in 78. I think it made like 30 million at the box office, something like that.
Oh, cool.
His next movie was one called American Pop that reviewed really well, and it was made for about $5 million. Similar animation style, that rotoscoped live action animation. But American Pop had been made for about $5 million, didn't do great at the box office. So this was sort of Bakshi wanted to work with Frazetta, and I think also maybe kind of build off of the momentum that Lord of the Rings had given him, and be like, well, why don't I go back to fantasy, because that made me some money. And so he was able to drum up the 1.2 million to make this, which is pretty modest, but it worked. Unfortunately, it wasn't exactly a box office boom. Came out in 1983, made somewhere around $800,000 at the box office. So it didn't make its money back. It did, however, hit VHS later that year, and grew a cult following in the home market. And over the years, it's gotten a lot more popular. And I understand how it didn't do well in the theaters, because I do think that while it probably reviewed okay from the technical aspects of it, sort of the animation part of it, the story just isn't one that's going to grab you.
Yeah.
But then I can see where it has legs in terms of like cult classic status, because it does have that look and that feel and that influence, because there's definitely influence both from Frazetta, but also Bakshi in so much of fantasy fiction and animation and live action since then. I mean, the ice wall, all that kind of stuff. So it's like, I get that. But it was one I kind of, if I were to grade this or put it on a scale, it's sort of in that 6 to 10 or 6 to 7 range for me. Like, it's good, it's enjoyable, but it's not blowing my socks off. However, yeah, I feel like it's important. If that makes sense.
I can see that. Yeah. Yeah.
I also love the music. I thought the music was really good.
Yeah, the music was cool. That was one of the first notes I made at the beginning. Like, we start with this. What I was noticing were very boring opening titles.
Yes.
It's just text on a screen, no backgrounds. But the score is really good. It feels like an epic fantasy score.
Mm-hmm.
It's not all 80s synthy like some scores of that era could be.
Yeah.
It sounded good.
Yeah, it went the Star Wars route of give us the real epic orchestral soundtrack to amp up the epicness of what you're watching that much more, over something synthy and sort of its time. I just recently watched The Hills Have Eyes for the first time, for another show that I'm doing on. It's a 1977 Wes Craven horror movie, and that one has just the most 70s of 70s music. It's very like funk guitar driven music at points that almost clashes with the dark, bleak, dreary nature of the horror film that it is. And that was one thing I liked about this, was it definitely, like, that music upped it a little bit. Because you're right, the opening credits, if it was sort of a synthy poppy musical score over those opening credits, that would have bored me to tears. It really would have. This gave me an idea. Oh, we're starting something. And then we go into that opening narration. What did you think of the narration to open things? How do you feel about that?
I think sometimes it can work.
Mm-hmm.
I think this was trying to be. It was kind of an awkward, just lore dump.
Yeah.
Of stuff that could have just been in the movie. I like that it was accompanied by Frazetta illustrations.
Mm-hmm.
So
that
it was
cool.
kind of like, here's the drawings that inspired all of this. But the opening dialogue was kind of not super interesting.
No.
been
it wasn't
much better integrated into the story.
Yeah. Now Susan Tyrrell did the voice work for that, and was also the voice of Juliana, and she sounds good. But
Mhm.
yeah, it is very much a lore dump. I almost would have really liked those Frazetta concept art drawings to start with those opening credits,
Yeah, that would have
and then work
made that
into,
more.
even if you keep the opening narration in place, but give us some motion visuals of the things going on that they're talking about, would have
Yeah.
been interesting. Maybe shorten it a little bit, and because it's always hard in a high concept world to get people in the front door, right? Like,
Mhm.
one of the things that Star Wars did well was they had the opening text crawl was just the right length to draw you in, give you some basic kernels of information, and then drop you into the action and start you with something. And we start with a spaceship getting shot at by another spaceship, and
Right.
like that to me is a great way to get going, because it gives you that opens the door and says come on in, and then as soon as you cross the threshold they hit you with stuff. This one just
Yeah.
went a little bit longer in the door opening, getting you in. Your foot is already in the door and you're like checking your watch, like, all right, are things going to start, type of thing.
Yeah. It was like the read was going, and I was okay with it at first, and then it was like a breath and a page turn, and I was like,
Yep.
oh, this is still going.
Oh, see, that's the parody of this would do that, right? The parody would
Yeah.
have the page turn mid sentence too, so you'd get that awkward
Yeah.
pause, turn the page, and then they'd finish the sentence and they'd keep
Yeah.
going. That's how the parody would go. And I'm not one. I don't love an opening narration, but I don't hate it on its face either. I think they can work. An
Mhm.
opening narration here works because you've got to set up the world. Now, an opening narration or voiceover, like in Blade Runner or the theatrical cut of Dark City, I don't like, because we don't need that there. A lot of that world gets told to you immediately. There is that show don't tell aspect of things. Like, you could give us, like you said, a lot of that opening narration could just be shown to us,
Yeah.
and then revealed throughout the movie, in more story and more dialogue, and less exposition and lore dump.
Right.
That's sort of, again, our D&D analogy. That's the DM was setting us up. He's like, all right, here's the backstory of the world. All right, now we can
Yeah.
start.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. I did capture a little bit of audio. I do want to play a couple of these because I thought there was some fun stuff to get. And I want to get your opinion on a couple of these. First of all,
Okay.
if you've listened to this show at all, you know how much I love laughs. And this one's a little bit long, but Necron, when Tigra is presented to him, and she stands up and she offers her hand in friendship, and then his reaction, and I'm just gonna let this whole thing play out because it's just so good. It's the wheezes. It's the
Yeah.
in between those that killed me. They were so good.
Yeah.
And I did also capture a shorter one of that I can put on my soundboard. It's just a couple seconds of it, but like it's one of the better fake stage laughs you'll get, because I know what they're going for there, and it's not quite sinister enough to be
Mhm.
threatening, but it's also not completely ridiculous and comical. Like it
Right.
is towing that line. So I thought that was pretty good. I don't know. Are you like me? Do you love those kind of fake stage laughs? Like when you can tell, because you know how it is. You can tell when somebody is laughing versus when somebody is like really uncontrollably laughing.
Yeah. I think they can be done well, or they can be done poorly.
Yeah.
If
Yes.
it's done well and placed in the right spot, it's great.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And you
but
can have them.
sometimes-
Yeah, you can have them done quote unquote poorly, but in the right way, like Dr. Evil's laugh in the Austin Powers
Yeah.
movies. Those are done to be ridiculous, and so they're done poorly, but in the right way.
Yeah.
But I'm with you. When they're not done right, they can kind of take you out. This one skirted that line for me, of being too much, but also like I love the way he wheezed in there.
Yeah.
It just killed me. Let's see. And
I think
along,
Necron.
go ahead.
I think Necron, as far as his voice acting goes, was one of the better parts.
Oh yeah.
Because there's definitely some very awkward dialogue delivered very awkwardly in a few points, and it's just like some people were just reading the script.
Yeah.
And
Which
going home, but he went for the evil villain thing, which was pretty great.
yeah, I feel like Stephen Mendel, who did the voice of Necron, was either given more time or just put more time into it. It felt like they chose or they decided to redo Tigra and Larn's voices later on, maybe.
Okay.
I don't know if that's the case or not, but it just almost felt like they didn't have enough time to really get into those characters, because you're right, they got a little awkward and a little flat.
Yeah.
But by comparison, Darkwolf, Steve Sandor, I thought did all his lines great, and Necron stuff was really good. So I feel like maybe they let Steve Sandor do the live action of Darkwolf and the voice, and I'm just wondering if they decided early on they were going to dub over Necron's voice, and then later on they're like, you know what, we're going to do Tigra's as well, and Larn maybe too. They weren't terrible. I've heard worse voice acting for sure, but Necron was one of the better ones. Right after that laugh too is when he then says,
"I spit on peace."
Oh, that's such a good line, just in general, like for your bad guy to say. I love that, because he and to the vitriol that he says it with, he's like spitting. You can feel the saliva, coming out of his mouth as he's saying this. He's literally spitting these words out. I love that.
Yeah.
This one's just labeled Necron. I'm trying to remember what this is, so here we go.
Necron.
Oh, it was just Reliel saying his name.
Yeah.
I think I just like the way she said that. That was when Larn is talking to her skeleton.
Okay.
And he mentions Necron.
Yeah.
Pretty sure. I mentioned this line earlier. It just cracked me up.
You must take that risk. You must take that risk, my son.
You must take that risk, my son. I'm going to stay here where it's safe and can release lava if anything goes wrong.
Yeah. Just going to stand here next to the lava lever. Good luck.
Good luck, son. We're all counting on you. And if it goes wrong, it's been fun. That one got me. Father. Oh, so I think we're like 20 minutes into the movie before Larn, 29 minutes into the runtime before Larn says anything. And he's been a major part of the action up to this point too. And his first line when he encounters the wolves, I believe, right, is
"Gods of my father."
Gods of my father. And then nothing really. The pantheon of gods or whatever in this world is not really ever discussed. But there are lines like that happen. So there's a lot of stuff I want to know more about in this world.
Right. Yeah.
This just because I want to yell this at some point to someone.
Man the Dragonhawks!
Just man the Dragonhawks, man. Man the Dragonhawks. Oh, pterodactyls. Those looked so good. They were really cool. And the shots of them flying too, I thought were really well done.
Yeah. So at the beginning, he sends them out pretty early. I'm guessing that's where that comes from.
Yes.
They don't really do anything at the beginning.
Nope.
I'm guessing they're looking for Tigra. That's after she's kidnapped. and then we don't see them again until the very end.
Yeah. Then it's like, oh yeah, we've got these things, by the way.
Yeah.
And I love that because they send them out like Dark Wolf was like, well, we'll take the Dragonhawks, and Joe's like, nah, it'll never work. He's like, well, maybe one of us will get through. Yeah, one of you got through. None of the Dragonhawks did. Like,
No.
one survived, and it was the one that was able to get Tigra and Larn out at the end when everything is melting because Gerald released the lava flow.
Yeah.
So, but
And that one was looking really rough when they
yeah, it was.
got out to it. I was like, is that still alive?
But man, that whole sequence leading up to the final battle where they're flying in and you got all the subhumans firing arrows off at them and all, like, just gorgeous and smooth animation too. Like, there again is something where I think hand drawing that without the rotoscoping, it's going to look good, but it's going to look a lot more stylized, and the animation is going to be different. And I think they were going for that very smooth animation, and it worked here. It looked really good, especially anytime like the Dragon Hawk riders would get hit with arrows. That was some of the stuff that really showed off what that rotoscoping can give you, because it really, you felt the impact of those arrows on them. Yeah. So I dug that.
During that sequence, one random thing, did you notice that there was like the one female subhuman, it's like a shaman, had a straight up Batman logo on her forehead?
I wrote that down. I was like, what? She's got a Batman logo on her head. All right, cool. Yeah.
She's a fan, I guess.
Yeah. And it was weird. She was the one female subhuman. But, yeah.
That was the only one we saw.
That's true. Batman fan. So, needless to say, at some point, I want to be able to yell,
"And the Dragonhawks!"
So, it ranks right up there with, like, yelling out to the boats. It's that kind of rally cry for me.
Get to the chopper.
Yes. Let's see. Oh, this was the envoys of Necron that get sent early on, which what I loved about that scene here again is some of the good writing, is Juliana and Necron are like, all right, we're going to send our envoys. Or Juliana says that, I'm going to send envoys. They're going to go with our demands. Necron's like, whatever, we should just go take what we want. She's like, no. We'll do this. And she was another character that just didn't have enough going on.
Right.
Because her story is interesting. And the idea that she's pulling the strings behind the scenes and trying to plot and scheme, I thought was kind of cool. And she had this idea of, we're going to send our demands. And she tells the envoys, you do that and also make sure about the daughter. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Mm-hmm. And so then the envoys show up and they're talking to Geralt and Taro. Meanwhile, the subhumans are climbing up the wall to go get Tigra, which I thought was really cool. But one of the things I really liked was the voice of the envoy that speaks doesn't at all match the expectation I had of how he was going to sound based on the look. I thought he was going to be either really gravelly or growly or almost like serpent-like. And it wasn't. It was a very smooth delivery. And I really liked that. And the fact that they're showing up for blackmail, so I didn't have to capture.
We call it an offer of alliance, Your Majesty.
I call it blackmail.
Like, the envoy's voice was cool. I like it.
Yeah, it's smooth, but it's still got a little bit of a creepy breathiness to it.
Yeah, breathiness is a good way to put it.
Yeah.
By the way, Taro, the prince, Gerald's son, is played by and voiced by William Ostrander. If you've ever seen the movie Christine, he's one of the bullies in Christine. His IMDb photo is definitely from Christine as well. And I just watched that one on The Last Drive-In with Joe Bob within the last 6 months. So I thought that was kind of cool. But yeah, I love the envoys. But again, there's all this kind of background stuff. Juliana's thing, the envoys, all this, the female subhuman, and like the shaman idea of that, and the subhumans in general. They're basically the same group of stuntmen over and over, so they all look the same, but there's so many of them. and
Yeah.
they are just largely cannon fodder. Like,
Yeah.
so many subhumans in this that get just wrecked, whether it's by a dark wolf or the giant lizard, which probably my second favorite scene is that giant lizard just popping out of the water and just going to town. That looked so cool. I loved all that, but like I just loved all these kind of side things. And again, Reliel and Atwa, their whole story. Who are they? Like that's kind of stuff I want to know.
Yeah.
And that was why I got the last clip I got was Reliel as well.
Avenge me.
Plus, I have that. I want to use that for like something. I don't know.
Yeah.
When I die in a
Always
video
good to
game
have-
while I'm streaming.
Yeah.
Especially
Always good to have an
multiplayer.
avenge me on deck.
Yes. Got to have that at a moment's notice. You never know when you're going to need that, right? You never know you're going to need somebody to avenge you. But yeah, like I want to know more of their story. I want to know more of Juliana's story. I want to know more Dark Wolf's story because Dark Wolf.
Yeah.
Was it me or did Dark Wolf sound like look like he should have had just this driving guitar metal like soundtrack every time he showed up on screen?
That would have been awesome.
Right? Because he just looks like, I mean, if there was anything, if you didn't know this was Frank Frazetta involved in this at all, he gives it away because he just looks like the cover of a Manowar album.
Right.
It's so good. This was a good choice of a movie, honestly. For all the nitpicking and the things we talked about that didn't work well in it, I still had a really good time watching this.
Yeah, definitely. It's not great story-wise or anything, but there's a lot of cool visuals, and it's not boring, which I think is the worst thing a movie can be. Like,
100%.
If it's not great, as long as I can have fun with it and see giant lizards and dragon hawks.
I think, too, it's an hour and 21 minutes, start to finish, including credits, and that's to its advantage because it definitely felt longer than that. And obviously, to flesh out any of this story stuff we've talked about, your movie's going to get longer. And it would be tough, I think, to have this be an hour and 45 minutes or 2 hours long. There's just, it would have been a tough sell, especially 1983 was going to be a real tough sell for it. So, you know, this may be, and this is like right to, what, a year before, or maybe even just a few months before He-Man comes out.
Oh, is it?
I think He-Man's right around 83, 84 as well when it debuts. So this was the perfect time for this movie to come out.
Yeah.
And but pacing it, the pacing was good, and keeping it crisp and short at an hour and 21 is to its benefit, because I definitely would have had a little more trouble with it if it had been, you know, an hour 40, an hour 50.
Yeah, I agree.
So, but no, I get why this is such a cult classic, and the influence of it is the other side, right? Like, so much influence, and every background in this you could take and frame and put on a wall. Like those background paintings that they did, that those two did, and whoever else was working on those, are just fantastic. Like every single one of them, just gorgeous. So it's interesting in that I think the individual parts of this movie are better than the sum of all of them in the movie. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think so, because there's a lot of individual scenes that are really interesting to watch or have something interesting going on, but then it doesn't all come together as well as it could have.
Yeah. Which sometimes happens. Sometimes a movie is, the sum of the movie is more than its individual parts. And sometimes you get this, which is, I feel like, because I do think the music is great. I think the background art is great. I think the animation is really good. It's just when you put all of that together in the runtime, it's good, not great.
Yeah.
But those individual pieces are great. So, you know, it happens. I think maybe with more time, with a little more money, a little more refinement, they may have done a little different, or depending on the era that you did it in, it may have turned out differently. We'll never know. But it's really cool to think of, Ralph Bakshi and Frank Frazetta just being like, let's just work on something good, because they were friends. They were friends before this, and it was kind of Bakshi wanted to work with him. And from what I understand too, apparently Frazetta was demanding. Like he was very demanding of the stunt performers while filming, that they move in very specific ways, which I get. He's got a vision.
Yeah.
But I'm sure that was, stunt performers, anybody doing a performance like that's going to have their input as well. So there can be a little clashes there. And then I think also some of the animators, maybe it was an intimidation thing of it's Frank Frazetta showing up, but the rumor or the trivia was that some of them would get flustered and or faint when he would come into the room. Maybe a bit apocryphal, but at the same time, like, it is Frank Frazetta, and he was already such an established name at this point. And here you are literally trying to draw his style of art, and the man comes into the room. I could see that, being a little intimidating. So, but yeah, I think I had a good time with this movie overall. This was a great choice. I'm glad that I got to see it finally, and kind of check that off the list. I'm glad that you got to see it. So, based on the Ralph Bakshi movies that you have seen now, where might you slot this one kind of in that list?
It's been a very long time since I've seen The Hobbit, but I feel like I remember that being really good.
The Lord of the Rings?
Did he not do The Hobbit also?
No, The Hobbit.
Somebody else?
The Hobbit was Rankin Bass.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I have not seen his Lord of the Rings movies.
Oh, okay.
So I guess I've only seen this and Wizards. And I think I'd put this ahead of Wizards just because Wizards gets so extra weird. I don't remember the specifics that well, but I remember especially like the end just gets super bizarre and I'm not sure what was going on.
Fair. I actually go in the reverse order there for the same reasoning. I think I put Wizards above Fire and Ice for me personally because it's a little bit weirder, and there's something about the Bakshi weirdness that I enjoyed in that, and that's not a knock on Fire and Ice at all, because I think Fire and Ice was really well done all the way through. But I think Wizards also, the other reason is because it is using some rotoscoping, I think, in there, but it's more stylized, and
It's definitely more stylized.
It gets a little weirder with its look, and I like that. But his Lord of the Rings, if you get a chance, and I think it is streaming, I'll take a look. I think it's on a streaming platform somewhere, but his Lord of the Rings is great. It is a lot of the first like Fellowship in through, I think it gets to the start of Two Towers in terms of the story. It might get all the way to Helm's Deep. I don't remember, but it's an interesting rendition of the Lord of the Rings for sure. I quite enjoyed it. It is a lot different from the Rankin Bass Hobbit. That is for sure. But Rankin Bass did the Hobbit, and then they actually came back and did the Return of the King. As well. So if you get a chance to watch that one, I recommend both of those. But definitely find Bakshi's Lord of the Rings and watch it, because it's quite good. But that's my favorite Ralph Bakshi that I have seen is Lord of the Rings. I do kind of want to find some of his older stuff just to see it and see what some of the hubbub and because there's some controversy, and I mean Fritz the Cat was X-rated, and is supposedly pretty. It's early 70s, so it's going to be a little rougher anyway in subject matter. So I'm curious to see that at some point. But no, overall I like his work. I think something like Cool World. He was part of the Mighty Mouse New Adventures in the late 80s. Was him, and the guy that made Ren and Stimpy, I think, worked on that too. He's an interesting animator. Taking animation in a very different way, which I appreciate, because I think that one of the things I love about animation is just how much you can do with it. Art in general, to me is always fascinating, because visual art like that, I don't have the skill. I didn't get into it early enough, and I didn't put in the time to it. So when I see artists doing their work, like when I look at your art, for instance, and I see that, and I'm just like, man, that the skill that is involved in that, and the time that you've put into it, and to take those things, because I'll get like images in my head, but I can't translate them to a page the way that you can, or my friend Phil Rude can, or Ralph Bakshi can. Like, I'm missing that part of it, and I'm sure I could cultivate that a little bit more in myself, and I actually am going to start trying to do that a little bit more. But to see it done is so fascinating, and I just love it. I love it a ton. Audie Norman as well is a fantastic artist. By the way, speaking of art, you do art. You do quite a bit of art.
I do all kinds of art.
What are you working on right now that maybe people could check out or pick up or look for?
So the big thing I've been working on the past month or so is going to be my first Kickstarter, launching in July, related to D&D. So this is very appropriate for this movie. I've been working on a subclass, a new Bard subclass for 5th edition that is inspired by ska music.
Oh,
Because
fantastic.
Metal has just had its stranglehold on the fantasy gaming for too long, and it needs to share. So I've been working on College of the Third Wave, which is the ska-inspired Bard subclass. I'm going to publish it as a zine, along with some monsters, spells, magic items, to make a whole package for your favorite game. It'll kickstart on July 2nd, but you can sign up for notifications now at tinyurl.com/skabard, SKABARD.
Excellent. For those that aren't seeing the video version right now, I'm like holding back while you're explaining this, my excitement to let it out right now, because holy crap, that's cool. As somebody who grew up right in that third wave of ska, and having an appreciation and a love for it to this day, that's so cool. I love that. And you're wearing a Pick It Up shirt, which is even better.
Yeah,
I just noticed that. So
this is from the Pick It Up Ska in the 90s documentary that came out a few years ago.
That is really, really cool. I am going to check that out, and that will also be in the show notes for anybody that wants to go to that. So the Kickstarter for Third Wave, that's cool. That's a great Bard subclass. I love it.
Yeah.
Very, very cool. So, well, good luck with the Kickstarter. I can't wait to see how that goes. And I'll confirm with you and make sure I get the right link so I can put that in the show notes for that Kickstarter. But awesome. Matthew, thank you so much for being here. This was fun. It was great having you back on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Now, if you enjoy this show and you want to see it live, typically I record Sunday nights, 8 p.m. Eastern time. We're recording a little different this week, but it's Father's Day weekend in the U.S., and so shifting things around. But I'm always recording Sunday nights, 8 p.m. Eastern time, twitch.tv/tvstravis or youtube.com/@tvstravis. You can follow me on all the socials, Twitter, Threads, Blue Sky, whatever. I post links when I go live there as well. So you can always find that. And this show comes out on Wednesdays, anywhere you get your podcasts, including YouTube. And you can always go to tvstravis.com and find links to this show, to all my other shows, Patreon. I'm redoing my merch site, so I'm adding merchandise and not only items, but I'm working on some new designs for things. And I'm going to hopefully try and bring a little bit with me when I go to DragonCon this year. So we'll see if I can pull that off or not. But check all that out at tvstravis.com. And aside from the Kickstarter, where can people find your work, Matthew?
My main website is skippinginfinity.com. That will have links to all the socials. I'm Skipping Infinity on most places, Facebook, Instagram. Just got on Kara, trying that one out.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I've mostly
Excellent.
abandoned Twitter, so don't bother looking for me there.
Understood. That's happening a lot lately, and I understand it.
Yeah.
So skippinginfinity.com, check that out for more of Matthew's amazing work, and it is amazing work. So I love all that. Next week, by the way, I'm doing a movie I'd never heard of before called Predestination. And I'm curious to see it. I believe this one stars Josh Hartnett. I'm going to look, just double check. Yeah, no, Ethan Hawke. That's who it is. Came out in 2014. So I've never seen it before. I'm going to check that out with my guest next week. So definitely come back for that. But until then, just remember to enjoy your movies, everybody. And let's be excellent to each other. There's been weight you haven't seen. That was a hell of a scream he let out there.
Yeah.
I loved that. It was so good.